Face to Face with Rashi.
Shall we begin? Let's begin now.
Professor Nishi Pandey on Face to Face with Rashi. When we have each other, we have everything. Born on July 1, Professor Nishi Pandey is the eldest daughter of late Dr. S.P. Tripathi and Dr. Shanti Tripathi and has learned from her doctor parents' sense of selfless service to others. A responsible daughter, she is an adorable sister to her younger siblings, a brother and two sisters. Professor Nishi Pandey is Director of International Collaborations and Coordinator of the Interdepartmental Center for Advanced Research in the Humanities and the Center for Cultural Texts, Records and Translation of Indian Literatures at Department of English and Modern European Languages, University of Lucknow. Professor Nishi Pandey provides leadership for steering and facilitating collaborative research work across faculties. She is also the director of a collaborative project with California State University, Long Beach. Professor Nishi Pandey holds a PhD in American literature and is a well-known expert in women's studies, higher education management and quality assurance, theatre, film and performance studies, cultural studies and literature in translation. She was the first woman recipient of the Saraswati Samman for academic research achievement and contribution to higher education conferred by the Government of Uttar Pradesh. She has received an IVLP Scholarship, a Charles Wallace Trust Scholarship and an Oxford University Scholarship for postdoctoral work. Professor Nishi Pandey has held a number of administrative and governance positions over the past 35 years. She has been the first woman appointee as Dean Student Welfare, Chief Provost and Chief Proctor. She has also been Director of Planning and Development Board, Internal Quality Assurance Cell Coordinator and Director of UGC Academic Staff College. Her areas of specialization include higher education management, quality assurance, teacher preparation and pedagogy, and action research on higher education, multi-ethnic literature, cultural studies, theatre, film, contemporary literature, literature in translation, women's studies, and American literature. Professor Nishi Pandey is the recipient of 4th Flow Women Awards of Uttar Pradesh 2018-19 for Outstanding Woman in Education, Rani Lakshmibai Bravery Award 2016 by the Government of Uttar Pradesh for academic and administrative achievements and her continuing contribution in the area of empowerment and welfare of women and girls, HT Woman 2016 Reader's Choice Award, Woman of Substance by the National Daily Hindustan Times in 2016, besides many others. Professor Nishi Pandey is the recipient of Fulbright Scholarship for the 2005 study of the U.S. Institute on Contemporary Literature at the Commonwealth Center for the Humanities and Society in the University of Lowell, USA. IVLP International Visitors Leadership Program Scholarship for strengthening and widening the scope of American Studies, the U.S. Experience in 2010 by the Department of State, Washington, D.C. and a scholarship by Oxford University in 1995. Professor Nishi Pandey is proficient in Hindi, English, Sanskrit, Bhojpuri and Awadhi. She did her intermediate and senior Cambridge from Loreto Convent College, Lucknow, her bachelor's in science and biological sciences from Isabella Thuban College, Lucknow, and master's in English from Department of English and Modern European Languages, University of Lucknow. As an educationist and a committed social worker, Professor Nishi Pandey is a member of many NGOs and institutions working for the underprivileged and marginalized, especially for the girl child and empowerment of women. She is deeply interested in literature, theatre, films, and all forms of visual and performing arts. A voracious orator, a dynamic administrator, an empathetic educator, and a passionate social worker. Professor Nishi Pandey is a wonderful human being. Faith is to believe on the word of God, what we do not see, and its reward is to see and enjoy what we believe. Yes, Professor Nishi Pandey has lived a life like a real warrior, an adorable daughter and a woman of super strength and substance. Professor Nishi Pandey on Face to Face with Rashi. Hello and a very warm welcome on Face to Face with Rashi. And truly said that the best hearts are ever the bravest. And yes, being both soft and strong, well, that's a combination very few have mastered. And I feel very honored, I feel very privileged to welcome on a show our special guest for today, Professor Nishi Pandey from the Department of English and Modern European Languages, University of Lucknow. Well, Co-ordinator, Center for Cultural Texts, Records and Translation of Indian Literatures, former Dean of Student Welfare, former Chief Proctor, former Chief Provost, and the first woman appointee to all these three posts. Now, when we talk of Professor Nishi Pandey, well, her vibrance, her boldness, her dynamism, it's all has left its indelible impression, all what ma'am has done and she has been doing an inspiration to youth, and I feel very fortunate to speak to my ma'am today. So ma'am, heartiest welcome on the show, and I'm really grateful to you for giving your valuable time to us. So how you're doing, ma'am? And yes, as we all know, these are quite unprecedented times. So how is literature helping you, beat this ambiguous stress of this pandemic?
Thank you very much, Rashi, for inviting me to this show. I'm very overwhelmed by your introduction and your very kind words. I feel humbled and I'm extremely grateful to you for not just inviting me, but for saying all these beautiful things about me. These are indeed very difficult times and unprecedented times. And it has led us to looking at ourselves in a different light. Confined to our homes, cut away from friends, from work, from a life that we normally had, the world has changed. And it really, really has changed. And it's really going to be changing more for us. In these times, one of the things that I noticed, happily and strangely, that more and more people have moved towards books. Whether it's on Kindle, or it's they're reading it online, or they are looking at their old books which are lying in their libraries and which they have been wanting to read. For myself, I too have gone into and looked into so many of my books which I thought if I had more time I could read. So it's been a win-win for literature, because all kinds of literature has been read. It's not just fiction and poetry or novels that are being read. All kinds of literature, philosophical pieces, a lot of other scientific pieces, a lot of reading has been happening during this time. So a couple of things that happened was looking at your own health, looking at your own well-being, and also looking at your intellectual growth. I think, when we had times where we were physically involved externally, doing all kinds of other things, we did not really bother, we just, the net would do. But now the web and the net don't do. So you look at other things to do there, not just play games. So a lot of young people have moved towards books, reading, understanding, introspecting, looking inwards, also a lot of reassessment, re-evaluation of your own life. And most of us have done that. Most of us are doing it. So whether it's in terms of a better health regimen, whether it's better food, more home cooked food, going back to cooking. So a lot of cookery books have got picked up. A lot of literature on cooking has taken center stage during this time. So I do look at this time as being very, very important. And I think it will be a very great turning point in the literary history of every language, whether it's Hindi or it's Urdu or it's Arabic or it's Sanskrit or it's English. A different kind of literature will be emerging post-COVID, because the COVID experience itself has been very transformative for people and for human beings and humanity. And what it's going to result in will only be visible once we have that literature coming out. I have a student who's just recently publishing a book on the positive things that have happened in COVID times, and that's one of the first books that is coming out, and she's going to shortly have a book release. She's written a very beautiful piece on all the positive things that came out of COVID. So in my understanding, literature wins either way. So it's a win-win for literature. And in times to come, just as when we have the Vietnam War, we have post-Vietnam War literature, or we've got post-World War II literature. We're going to have a post-COVID literature too. And that will be different. And we have to look forward to that. I look forward to that, because it will take us in a different direction. It will really give us an understanding of how humanity has transformed, because great transformation is taking place, and great transformation, when it takes place, is its impact is found on literature.
You were listening to Professor Nishi Pandey. Well, ma'am, even your simplicity is gorgeous, right? So when you look back, you must have realized that, even the simple situations, they're being made complexed, right? And then, of course, to establish truth, justice, and fairness, a fight begins. So my question to you is, like, as a woman especially, I'm sure it would have called for an additional edge of bravery. So whenever such situations came, how did you deal with them? And what was the source of that inspiration that really gave you the courage, to fight them out, and to fight them out with so much of a strength?
Rashi, being born a woman is such a blessing, and I've always felt blessed that I was born a woman. The kind of strength that women have, men can't even aspire for. Being physically brave is one thing, but the kind of inner strength and resilience with which we are born, because we are destined to be mothers, that it's amazing what it can do for you if you realize your strength. In a patriarchal society, where you were born, where I was born, and for many more years women will be born, we will always have to tap into that inner resilience, that inner strength. Now, in my growing up years, I was brought up by a father who actually never taught me to be scared. So courage was something that came naturally to me. I wanted to say something, I would be able to say it. I wanted to fight with a man or a boy my age, I could do it. And so he actually always taught us never to be frightened, never to be scared. So as part of my value system, that I naturally had courage. I grew up having courage. I had the courage to be able to speak what I wanted to speak. I had the courage to fight it out. I had the courage to argue. I had the courage to be able to get my point across as a young girl. Now I think that's very important. Having said that, the value system that I grew up with, and the value system that I selected and chose for myself and for my life, definitely had courage, 3 times. And courage for what? Courage for, courage to tell the truth. Courage to face up to what you've done. Courage to take control of your life. Courage to do things that you think is right. So I've always felt that courage is the most important thing in a woman's life. And I think that I was blessed that I had a support system where I could, and that I could face my life with courage. Now, in a man's world, and in a patriarchal society, it's been a very tough life and a very huge struggle. When I came into the academia, I thought everything would be kind of hunky-dory and that it's the intellectual world, and so it would be equal and that I would not feel discriminated against. But let me tell you my life experience at age 62, that you are discriminated and discriminated and discriminated because you're a woman. Now, in my scenario, in the world of academia, there were so many occasions when I found myself constantly standing on the margin. But I always made it a point to get across my point, to air my opinion. I was least worried about approval from my male colleagues. I was not looking at approval from anybody. I was just looking at what I wanted to do. I was focused on what I thought was right and what I wanted to do and what I wanted to say. And I think that held me in great stead. And the fact that I did not bother about how others were thinking about me. I did not want to please my male colleagues. I did not want to please my male superiors. I would do my work efficiently, diligently, and honestly. And I think that paid off in the end. That I was focused to be diligent, honest, and consistent. That I was reliable. That I was good at my work. That I was hardworking. There were so many other things. Because as I took myself ahead in my career, I realized that a woman will have to work 500 times more than a man to be considered as equal in the world of academia, and 1,000 times more than him to be even acknowledged very grudgingly that she is better. Now, I had the privilege of, cracking the glass ceiling, becoming the first of so many things that you've already said before. I got so many administrative posts, virtually every important administrative post in the university, and I was the first woman occupying that space. Now, once I was there, I made it a point to work in that position, or whichever position was given to me, using my own sensibility, using my own strength, and using my own feminine sense of perception and perceiving things. And I think that paid off. Bringing with me my hard work, my diligence, my commitment, I also brought with me a fresh perspective that a woman should bring. So I was not conforming to any male model. I made my own models and I went forward. Now, it was a strong backlash that I got from the males in the academia, and so I was subject to everything that women are in society when they are assertive. I was called aggressive, I was called bossy, I was called extremely rude, which I wasn't. But I continued to be the way I was. I was speaking my mind, I was asserting myself, I was making sure that what I wanted got across to people, and I was able to deliver. So it isn't a very easy world for women. It isn't an easy world even in the world of academia where we think everything is equal. But I think that it's been a very, very tough and a rough road. But I've never seen it as tough. I've always seen every challenge that came my way as an opportunity. I literally saw it as a challenge. When I got these positions and I cracked these ceilings, everybody thought that, a great thing had been done. Of course, a great thing was being done. But as a woman, I was standing on the top alone, because once you crack the glass ceiling, you're standing on a precipice. There's nobody there. You're all alone there. You have to fight your own battles. You have to be confident that you can do it on your own. You have to be confident that that's the way it will go. You have to be confident that there'll be nobody walking with you. It's akla chalo re. Walk on your own. Walk alone. Can you do it? If you can do it, then you can reach there. So it's been tough, but it's been very rewarding, because I have been able to impact the lives of thousands and thousands of children. I've been able to be a role model to so many. I'm happy to say that today the University of Lucknow, if you look at its administrative structure, almost 40% are women occupying important positions like Dean, Student Welfare, Chief Provost. All the positions that are held are being occupied by women, and they are being brought into the mainstream. So it's been good for a 100-year-old university to eventually have recognized that women can do it.
Professor Nishi Pandey on Face to Face with Rashi. Ma'am, we have seen your cute childhood pic. Yeah, so we would definitely like to know how you were as a growing child, because we believe that this child was different. This child was extraordinary in her approach, because the child was destined to become Professor Nishi Pandey. And in my words, quote unquote, the lady whose fortitude has inspired many. So we would like to know, about your childhood, what kind of child you were.
Well, I was very lucky. I had a very happy childhood. I grew up in a family which was a joint kind of family on my grandfather's side, and even on my Nanihal side. We had a lot of cousins and everyone together. I had parents who were both doctors. So we largely came from a family where people were either doctors or they were teachers. So it was a family on both sides, which was basically, there was a deep sense of service to others. And so there was a deep value for that. Both my nanny and her sister were teachers. My grandfather was in the police. My parents were doctors. My aunts were doctors. So we came from a family where everybody was working and everybody was in a profession which was basically of service to others. So I was privileged that way to see it all around me, and that it came naturally to me. I wanted to be a teacher. I've always wanted to be a teacher above everything else, and that's what I became. My greatest memories of my childhood are of fun times with my cousins, with my sisters and brothers, because we were 4 of us, and the times that we visited my parents, because my parents were doing village service. So in the initial years, they were both doctors serving in the villages. So we have a huge experience of going to the village. And when we became older, we were sent off to study and stay with my Mausi and my Nani. But we were always going back for holidays to the village. So a huge dose of village life, But along with that, learning how to make, cow dung cakes, and cooking and roaming in fields and climbing trees, and the regular stuff that kids do, because there was no entertainment except to be running around in fields and playing around. But it also gave me an opportunity to look at how rural India was. So when I grew up, that experience was very, very good for me. And I saw how my parents struggled to set up a hospital, to make small things work, to put up an emergency unit, there was such lack of facility, there was no electricity, but childhood was wonderful, and it was very, very enriching. When I grew older, I realized how it enriched my understanding of people. When I became a teacher, I could so easily identify with where my students were coming from, especially the students who were coming from rural backgrounds, their issues, their problems. They hadn't much changed. And I could understand how aspirational they were. I could also understand how important it was for me to help them, to handhold, to support, to help them excel. And so I think a lot of my childhood experiences, my learnings from watching those around me, a brilliant aunt who was a doctor, a brilliant aunt who was a professor at the university, my parents who were doctors, look at my brothers, my cousins everybody was serving others. So to be of use to others, to serve and cater to young people came naturally to me. And as a teacher, therefore, I think I could invest much of that love and that compassion and that concern and that care in the lives of my students. And I think that made a difference. So I had a very, very happy childhood. And I had also a childhood in which I had a lot of support. Nobody actually made me feel, marginalized because I was a girl. My father did not differentiate. So if everybody was getting 2 laddus and I wanted 2 laddus, the boys got 2 laddus and I wanted 2 laddus, I got it. My father ensured that I got it. So he brought us up as equal, and my mother was a doctor. Both of them were earning together. And so I grew up seeing, people around me who were really rendering services to the nation and to society. Another thing that I saw was, my aunt was, I had an aunt who was unmarried, and she was a doctor, very prominent and famous doctor in Bihar. We grew up with her because we were studying with her till we were in class 6, and my parents were in the village. But I did see the difference. You see, I grew up with an aunt who was absolutely in control of her life. So she was driving us around and taking us around, and she earned her money, and she lived with her mother, and everybody else lived with her in a joint kind of family. On the other hand, I had my mother who was married, and I saw how disempowered sometimes my mother was within the marriage structure. So as I grew up, I could see these differences, and I really actually could weigh and see and understand that I wanted to be more like my aunt, more in control of my life, more in control of my money, more in control of my situations, and to take decisions. And then fortunately for me, I had a father who was very, very progressive that way, who allowed us as girls to make our own path. So I'm grateful for my life, and I'm grateful for my parents and my aunts and everyone who's influenced my life and brought me here. They were huge, huge inspirations. There were such inspirational women in my life. My grandmothers, my grandmother and her sister, they were both educated. They were teachers. My nana was Swatantrata Senani. My grandfather was in the police, and so there were so many inspirational people around me. So I absorbed a lot from them. Along with that, we had other inspirations in the form of the first woman IPS officer, Kiran Bedi, whom I deeply admired. We had the first woman Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi, who was phenomenal. I mean, politics aside, but as a woman, I felt that, it was so empowering to see her, and, I aspired to be a woman who could have a mind of her own, who could take her decisions and be in a position of authority.
You were listening to Professor Nishi Pandey. Ma'am, I take it as a blessedness to have been taught by you in my post-graduation Hamlet by William Shakespeare. Now that takes me to another question, that's the relevance of William Shakespeare in the syllabus of schools and colleges, because now when the great dramatist literature is being dropped by the UP board, UP board has issued amended curriculum for classes from 9 to 12, right, in accordance with the UP government's decision to curtail syllabus by 30% for the academic session 2020-2021. So how do you see it, when students, they would be skipping the drama of William Shakespeare?
Look, Rashi, in post-colonial times, we are still stuck with the idea that if William Shakespeare is not taught to school children, then they're never ever going to learn anything about literature. The important thing is to study literature. Now what you study, if you may read a dramatist who's Indian. You can have a piece from Indian writing in English. The important thing is that there should be literary texts included in school syllabuses. Now in changing times, in a post-colonial world, and in India which is fast changing, I think it is important for us to understand that studying Shakespeare is not so important, but studying literature is important. Studying a little of philosophy is important. Studying a little of other things is important. So if we do not study William Shakespeare in the school level, the heavens will not fall. But if we don't study William Shakespeare in a master's program in English literature, then the heavens will fall, right? So I really think that it's important for us to understand that curriculum will change. You may introduce new texts, you may introduce another playwright, you may introduce something more contemporary, you may introduce something which is more relevant for them because it will be of interest to them. Sometimes the Shakespearean language is very, very difficult for young children, and times have changed. So with changing times, if we take a call on what kind of literature or which pieces they may read and that we can revise that, I don't think there's anything wrong with that as long as we keep literature as a part of the curriculum of students in school.
A 34-year-old national policy on education that was framed in 1986, that's replaced by the new Education Policy 2020. And here we see the changes, a single regulator for higher education. Then we have multiple entry and exit options in degree courses. Then we have discontinuation of MPhil programs, lower stakes board exams, common entrance exams for universities. So how do you see this new Education Policy 2020?
The new education policy is very, very welcome. It was long, long overdue, and I'm really happy to see that the new policy is looking at a more learning-centric classroom, a more student-centric classroom than a teaching-centric classroom. So the most important shift has been, whether it's pedagogy, whether it's curriculum, whether it's options for students, whether it is flexibility, of when they want to study, at what levels they want to study, that they can exit and they can come in again. Issues of lifelong learning, somebody who's in their 40s or 50s wants to study something else. The policy seems to be addressing just about everything. Another thing important about the policy is that when you look at it, I mean, I'm an American literature specialist, and I've looked at the American education system during my Fulbright programs that I was there at the various universities. I find that a lot of things that are reflected in the new education policy has to do with what is being done across the world, and a lot of good practices and best practices from American universities or American educational system, like seamless education, has been adopted. Community colleges, so many other things have been adopted. Now, another thing that is very, very important is giving the flexibility to students to choose when they want to study. They want to study for 5 years, then take a break, then come back again. So, the whole policy is looking at an innovative, more creative way of engaging students in higher education. It's also looking at continued, I mean, it's very, very heartening to note that there is going to be a continuous process of education. Even if you're 60 and want to go into college and study, you can do that. So that flexibility is there. For students of science to be able to choose subjects from other disciplines, the entire curriculum that they're looking at, the entire process that they're looking at is more interdisciplinary. It's more practical. It's more practical oriented. It's more of praxis rather than theory. And it's more of, adapting to what the student needs. It's also engaging students more in the classroom. It's an innovative pedagogy. Every teacher is going to have the choice, giving more autonomy to the teacher. Then pedagogy can be more culture specific. It can be more region specific. And I think that these are excellent ideas that have been brought in. And I think that it's going to really prepare India to be, the coming generations of India, to be ready for, for getting more work. Because if you notice, it's looking at training students from a young age in skills. So skills development at a younger age, if it begins, it makes them more ready for the market, it makes them more ready for jobs. So those wanting to do jobs can then go into jobs and drop out early. Those wanting to go into pure academics can take courses. For example, dropping an MPhil course. What is the necessity of an MPhil course? If you're being able to study all that MPhil is supposed to teach you in a postgraduate class, and then subsequently you have a PhD program which is more enriched. You don't need the MPhil class. So many such irrelevant courses which were just keeping students blocked into a space that they have nothing to do, so they come and study, that's going to go. And it's a very, very ambitious and challenging policy. And whether it's bringing online education, whether it's bringing blended learning, whether it's looked at just about everything. And I think that's amazing. I'm very, very happy. And it's also very reflective of the kind of practices they have in American universities and the American system.
You were listening to Professor Nishi Pandey. Well, if music is the food of love, play on. So we all would love to know about Professor Nishi Pandey's favorite music, actor and the author.
Oh, you've asked me my favorite question. So I love cinema, I love music, I love dance, I love the arts. I love painting. I'm just majorly into it because I think no professor of literature can actually remain dissociated from this, because literature really pulls in all these arts together. And I really do love watching cinema, and I do watch a lot of world cinema, and I've watched it for years. I have a huge collection of DVDs now. They're outdated, my nephew tells me, but I very much have them. And when it comes to music, I listen to all kinds of music. So I like Western classical music, I like a lot of pop music, I like a lot of rock and roll. I'm a huge Beatles fan, and I'm a huge Queen fan. And so, I listen to all that. At the same time, I look at myself listening to some really good Hindi music of old is gold kind of music. So the music that I heard on transistors playing when I was a young kid, skipping around in the village gardens with my brothers and sisters, the kind that played on Radio Ceylon. I love all that. So the music of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. A lot of the modern music is also very, very interesting, and I like that too. But the thing is that most of it I find too much of a cacophony, but if it's melodious and if it's got words and I always think that lyricists are great poets, and there's nothing, no aspect of Indian life or a human experience which is missing from Indian film music. So I'm a great fan of Indian film songs, and I like them also. I do not have any one favorite, but there may be a couple that I can select to say that this is the one which reflects my life philosophy. So that's there, but I think we can do without the philosophy. When it comes to cinema, I've been a huge fan of Robert Redford for donkey's years, since I was a kid. And so Robert Redford remains a favorite, but I also like so many of these wonderful actors that we have now. I like Leonardo DiCaprio, I like so many of the younger ones. So I think I'm fond of most actors. There are no actors I don't like. There's nothing about cinema that I don't like. So the friend of mine who always keeps telling me, okay Nishi, tell me a film you don't like. Tell me a film you've ever hated. So that's me, such a huge cinema buff. When it comes to Indian actors, I like some of the younger ones. I find them so interesting. Of course, but one of my favorite and the cutest that I find on the block is this Tiger Shroff. I think he's such a dedicated kid, and I don't know, I was a fan of his father's also. I was a big Jackie Shroff fan. So I guess Tiger Shroff is on my list as a favorite in the upcoming ones. Alia Bhatt is great, Ranbir Kapoor is great, and so we've got some really good stars there. So that's music and that's cinema. And I think if I look at, what else did you ask me? Okay, books, yes. So books, I read everything, and I love biographies, and I've read so many biographies that I can't say which one is my favorite. But Khalil Gibran is an all-time favorite, and when I look at poets, no poet can beat Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass or Emily Dickinson's collection of poetry. I mean, amazing. So I think I'd go with these three.
Professor Nishi Pandey on Face to Face with Rashi. Well, I wish this chat goes on, and my heart goes on. But then we're towards the end of a show, ma'am, and I've penned down something for you, and I hope it reaches your heart because it comes from the core of my heart. Well, her spark embellishes the grandeur of her strength. Yeah, she's extraordinarily gorgeous. And trust me, she's unbelievably sweet and tender at heart. Ladies and gentlemen, we were in conversation with Professor Nishi Pandey from the Department of English and Modern European Languages from the University of Lucknow. And ma'am, we would love to wind up with your words of strength for the youth. And thank you so very much for giving your valuable time to me, my show and the channel. And would always seek your love and blessings. Take very good care of you. Stay safe, and warm regards to everybody home. Ma'am, your words of strength for our audience.
So, for young people, boys and girls, there's a common thing that I'd like to say. Number one is that understand nothing can compensate for hard work. You have to work hard in your life because nothing can compensate for hard work. Number two, you must keep trying and aspiring to reach your goal, and eventually you will. So there is this maxim, try and try again till you succeed. You definitely will succeed. The third thing that I've learned from my life is never judge anybody. Accept people the way they are. Don't judge them. If you don't judge people, you'll make sure that they are with you all the time. Another important thing that you must remember is that you have to have control over your life. Learn to control your life and take it in the direction in which you want to go. What I'm saying is not easy to do, but that's what you need to do, is to remember that you are responsible for your life. You must have hold of it and take it forward. a special word for girls. Let me tell you here that I see myself as an empowered woman. And to be empowered, what I have done is to take all my decisions myself. The day you have the freedom to take all your decisions yourself, you become empowered. May you be empowered. May you have the power and the capacity and the capability and the courage to make all the decisions of your life yourself. You will be strong, you will be happy and fulfilled. So as I go away, I would also like to take this opportunity to give my blessings to my dearest student Rashi, and to tell you, Rashi, how proud I am of the fact that you've been selected on the International Broadcasting Jury of the UK for 2020. How wonderful. It gladdens my heart to see you doing so well. I do watch your programs very, very carefully, and I enjoy them so much. I enjoy your singing, and I enjoy these programs that you have, your face-to-face, and I'm very, very grateful that you invited me. Thank you very much for having me here, for having spent this time with me and enriching me. I learn a lot even from you when I listen to you. Thank you so much. God bless you.
You were listening to Professor Nishi Pandey. A strong woman isn't simply born. She's forged through the challenges of life. With each challenge, she grows mentally, intellectually, and emotionally. She soars high, determined, disciplined, and dedicated. She moves forward with a head held high and a strength that cannot be denied. Each time a woman stands up for herself, she stands up for all women. She's vibrant, creative, full of colors and life. She believed she could, so she did.
Thank you, ma'am. And thank you so much, dear audience, for joining us. I'm sure you must have enjoyed this wonderful conversation with Professor Nishi Pandey from the Department of English and Modern European Languages, University of Lucknow. Well, take very good care of you. Stay safe and goodbye. Lots of love and God bless.